Hello, college football fans, and welcome to episode 14 of the SEC Yesterday and Today. I'm your host, Byrd LaCroix, and we'll bring out our special guest for this week in just a few moments. We're going to be focusing primarily on Auburn and Washington. The Tigers and the Huskies, of course, will play this Saturday afternoon at 3:30 Eastern Time on ABC at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. But before we talk about that game and make some predictions in both the Southeastern Conference games that will be played this Saturday and also some Pac-12 games that are going to be played, let's take a brief look at the history of the SEC versus the Pac-12 throughout the years. The first time the conferences met, 1933. That was a game between Georgia and Southern Cal. Southern Cal came out on top in that game in 1933, 31-0. The last time two teams played from these rival conferences was last year. The California Bears, beat Ole Miss 27-16 in 2017, last season, and UCLA sneaked by Texas A&M 45-44 in a shootout last year, also in 2017, also at the same Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Oddly enough, the Auburn Tigers and the Washington Huskies have never played each other in college football, but of course, they'll be doing so Saturday with the 6th-ranked Huskies taking on the 9th-ranked Tigers. Now, Auburn has played 7 games over the years, beginning in 1973 against Oregon State. That was the first time Auburn had played a Pac-12 team, and over the years, they have played 7 games. I mentioned that Auburn has won 5 and lost 2. The Washington Huskies have won 1 ball game while losing 8 to the Southeastern Conference over the years. Total wins and losses in the series is the SEC 72 wins, the Pac-12 42 wins, and 5 games have ended in a tie. That's not going to happen on Saturday afternoon, so without further ado, let's get to our guest, Mike Wilson. Mike resides in the Valley of the Sun out in Arizona, and we got to know each other through Campus Press Box when both of us were writing for Campus Press Box back in 2014. You can find Mike on the airwaves at Sports Byline Radio, and you can find him in print. He's a senior writer on Pacific Takes, and he's also on fansided.com, and we are delighted to have Mike Wilson with us today on the SEC Yesterday and Today. And welcome to the SEC Yesterday and Today, episode 14. Mike, it's great to have you with us.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to hear your voice again. And let's talk some SEC and Pac-12, man. Let's get this thing going.
Well, let's get this thing going because everybody's chomping at the bit across the country for their team, their conference, whatever it might be. And we've got the class of the Pac-12, the Washington Huskies, coming down to Atlanta to play Auburn in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. And it should be a classic, and I'm excited about it. So let's get right down to it, Mike.
Okay, let's do it.
We're going to do get a scouting report of some sorts from you. If you would, tell us a little bit about the Washington Huskies offense, defense, and special teams, and not necessarily in any particular order, but I'm just going to hand that off to you and let you go at it.
Okay.
Take it away.
Well, being a Pac-12 guy like I am, and you've known for a long time, I'm the West Coast guy. The Huskies are looking to get off the schneid in a big way, beating Auburn. What is Auburn ranked? They're ranked preseason like 9 or something like that.
Yeah, they're 9 in AP.
Yeah, and so the Huskies I think are ranked like 6th or 7th.
Right.
This would be a huge win for the Huskies. This would be a huge win for the conference. The conference, as you well know, did not have a very good bowl season at all. The Huskies were in the Fiesta Bowl last year. They lost to a very tough Penn State team that had Saquon Barkley. So they're looking to make amends for a few losses last year and just to get back to that playoff in which they played Alabama in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. So, they're going back to a place where they're used to it. I don't think anything's going to shock them. But, one of the things that UW as we call them here out west,
Hmm.
has is that they return almost 75% of their team. Like they have a lot of experience. They have a lot of guys that have played a lot of snaps. And then, I don't know about you and what you think of Chris Peterson, but out here, Chris Peterson is, to me, he's turning into one of the best coaches nationwide.
Yeah, I have loved Chris Peterson since his days at Boise State. I think he's fantastic, and I always reference back to that 2007 Fiesta Bowl when they beat Oklahoma, and I think that's kind of made. I mean, I was kind of a Boise State fan pulling for them out of a conference against a lot of these big teams they went back up against back in the day. And that night, watching that game after Auburn had played Nebraska in the
Yeah.
Cotton Bowl earlier in the day was fantastic, and all of the razzle dazzle and so forth. And
Hook
he's
and
just a great.
ladder, Statue of Liberty. Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, that was fantastic. So I look forward to going against the guy. And Gus can be sort of a gadget guy on occasions too. So we're going to see how this goes.
I think the possibility for a lot of points in this game is certainly there. Washington has a really good offense. I mean, they returned Jake Browning for his final year. It seems like Jake Browning has been there, for like 10 years, but he came
He
in.
does.
Go ahead.
No, he does. It seems like he's been around forever.
Yeah, and so he started first when he was a freshman, so he's played plenty of games. He's been in plenty of big games. I personally have seen him play probably close a half dozen times, even in the Pac-12 title game. They also returned their swift, quick running back in Miles Gaskin. So,
Yeah.
that guy he's not a big back. He's not your SEC, we're going to bowl you over kind of guy. He's the guy that if you get him in space and he gets a little daylight, he's gonna burn you. And he's small, he's quick. When that big offensive line for the Huskies stand up, it's tough to see this kid. And by the time you see him, it might be in your rearview mirror. So Gaskin is certainly somebody that I don't know if you're going to be at the actual game, but I mean Gaskin is someone that you got
Oh
to
yeah.
keep your eye on if you are Auburn. The other thing is that they have a healthy Chico McClatcher. This kid, he missed the final five or six games last year, and he's their big play receiver that they, like I said, they didn't have last year. The offensive line returns about half the offensive line, I believe. And they're just flat out big. I mean, they're big like an SEC team. They're not necessarily
Hmm.
like bulky like an SEC team. They want their offensive linemen to get out quickly and on pull blocks, on anything to get their playmakers in space. Here's where I think Auburn is really going to be concentrated on the defense for Washington. They're going to get after you
Hmm.
like that. The defense for Washington is pretty filthy, especially the back end of that defense. One thing that I will tell you is that these cornerbacks and these safeties, they hit. Their safeties are, I like to kind of call them headhunters. So if you got guys going across the middle,
Yeah.
they're gonna take they're going to take their shots at those receivers or running backs, slot guys that want to get downfield. So it's going to be an interesting game. I really do think UW is the class of the Pac-12. I do think that they're the only chance that we have of getting to the playoff. So beating an Auburn certainly will get them started to a place where they want to go. Come December and January. So there's kind of your synopsis of it of UW. I'm just excited for the game.
Yeah, it is shaping up to be a good one. I think both teams can be very physical. Auburn is one thing about Auburn is they have a lot of speed, and they've added a great deal of speed with this incoming freshman class. We just got the updated
Right.
Depth chart today. Gus had his presser, and we got the depth chart, and there are 4 freshmen, true freshman wide receivers in this class, and they are all on the depth chart. One of them, by the way, is a guy named Shedrick Jackson, and he's a guy that can go over the middle. He's going to play some, but Auburn has done a lot of quick stuff, tunnel screens and so forth, getting guys in space and going deep, but they hadn't done as much intermediate and across the middle stuff as I think a lot of people would have liked to have seen over the past few years. And Shedrick Jackson is a guy that can do that. And I think Darius Slayton, who was our fastest receiver until another new freshman came in, and he's been our deep guy. And they try to get people behind. Of course, Auburn wants to stretch you out, not let those safeties come up, and then they're going to be able to pound the ball. And that's one thing I really like about Auburn now is instead of running the ball to set up the pass, they're going to pass the ball to set up the run with Jarrett Stidham. And he's got a plethora of receivers to throw to. I mentioned Shedrick Jackson, who is Bo Jackson's nephew.
Really?
Yeah, really. And there's a guy named Anthony Swartz, who is one of the top 1 or 2 fastest guys in the world. He runs 100 meter. He ran about a 10.09 not too terribly long ago. And he came to Auburn on the condition that he could run track. So our track coach, Ralph Spry, got a blazing speed track guy. And then Gus gets a guy with incredible speed. And then there's another freshman wide receiver, Matthew Hill. And then one more, Seth Williams. And all of them are going to see playing time right off the bat. And that's exciting, and that's very good because Will Hastings and Eli Stove, 2 of our wide receivers, both had ACL injuries in the spring, and they'll be out until about mid-season. So anyway, Auburn's going to hopefully throw the pass to set up the run and be able to keep Washington stretched out, keep the field spread out, and do what they would like to do. But in reading about that secondary that you mentioned, they strike terror in my heart because evidently those guys can play. And one thing that Auburn has got to do, here's the biggest potential issue for Auburn, is rebuilding the offensive line. And they lost 4 guys, starters off of the line last year. And they have the 2 guards and the center that have played together a lot in practice and taken a lot of reps. But they haven't played before in a game. So, but there's a lot of talent on that offensive line. It's just got to be built. And, in this first game, they hadn't had a ton of time and game experience to come together, and get their whole communication thing down.
Right. And one thing I'll tell you about the defensive line for the Huskies, they lost their nose tackle, Vita Vea, to the draft. I mean, he's a Tampa Bay Buck now, and that guy just was a run-stopping, bulldozing kind of kid. And now they have to replace him. So there are some challenges that Washington has on that defensive line. But Peterson almost just about has his program to the point where and I think Auburn's there too, where it's not necessarily you might have a down year, maybe like they had last year, but it's not a rebuild. It's kind of a reload, right. and you have the young talent. So they're going to have some guys that they're going to depend on, and there's a sophomore and a senior, a couple seniors now on that defensive line that they're going to try and handle that young. It sounds like a young offensive line for Auburn. So, everybody always talks about, it's the game's won in the trenches. And you can make a solid argument that this game is going to be determined there because of what UW has had to replace and a bit of inexperience on their defensive line, and then what Auburn has with the young kids on their offensive line.
That's exactly right, and they should. I think Stidham's got to have time. First game last year, Auburn played Clemson, and couldn't move the football. They had 11 sacks, and that was Herb Hand was the offensive line coach then, and he went out to Texas. And J.B. Grimes came back to Auburn. He'd been gone a couple of years. He's back in Auburn, and he's really one of the best in the country at teaching and getting his guys to play together. So I'm thinking Grimes can get this offensive line to do enough to give Auburn. To give Stidham some time to throw and to give the backs some room to run. But Auburn's strength of the entire football team is the front 7 on defense, which is arguably the best in the country. Certainly, I think it's the best in the SEC. There's people that are going to argue with
right.
you, but it is just beastly. And if they can if they can get that movement and they can push that offensive line back and chase Browning around all afternoon, then Auburn will be very successful.
Yeah, and you said you wanted me to talk a little bit about the special teams for the Dogs. The first 3 seasons of Peterson, the special teams play was ranked right around 39th, which is, in the whole scheme of things, I would look at that and say that's all right. Last year, they plummeted it to 105th because their field goal kicker started 4 for 9. He finished going 8 for 10, but their punting game last year was really good with Joel Whitfield. He was 7th in punt efficiency as a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna there's gonna be times where UW's gonna have to punt, and having a punter who can pin the opposition down there is only going to help that defense and gain some confidence for a team that, in essence, they're playing a road game. I mean, this crowd at Mercedes-Benz is going to be, there's going to be a lot of orange and blue there for them. So, if it comes down to kicking, it's kind of hide your eyes and look the other way, with UW, because you don't know, like Forrest said, you don't know what you're going to get. And, let's hope it doesn't come down to field goals for the Huskies, on Saturday. So we'll see.
Yeah, I hope that's one thing Auburn really improves on is special teams. Their punt and kick coverage last year was not nearly where it should be, but there's a lot. I mentioned all the speed. There's a lot of athleticism and speed on Auburn's team now, and I think that's the one operative word you can say about them. And strength, speed, and strength. And they have punting was good at times. The guy, Aiden Marshall, was the guy from last year, and he was pretty decent at punting it inside the 20. But his hang time and his distance sometimes was inconsistent. So they got this guy from Australia who's played Australian rules football and rugby, and he comes from is it Pro Kick out of Australia. The last 5 Groza Award winners have come from this. Well, that's where he comes from.
Yeah, there's a pipeline from Australia out here.
Yeah. Well, they've got Aaron Sippus is his name, and he was expected to come in and just take the punting chores away. And being a tough guy that played rugby and so forth, they say, well, there's that potential of a fake kick. But I mentioned that the depth chart came out today. I saw that Marshall, our freshman kicker from last year, won the job over Sippus.
Wow.
So I was very surprised. But anyway, Auburn's got a lot of speed returning punts too, and that's one thing I hope that they'll do well on, and that they'll be able to do better in covering both of them. So now we've talked a little bit about offense, defense, special teams. Let's get right into predictions. Auburn and Washington, you take it.
Boy, you know what? As much as I tend to pick the Pac-12, I'm actually going to go with Auburn here by a field goal, like 31-28, something like that, 35-32. I just think I just got a feeling that this is going to be a close game. It's going to be decided by kicks, and just not knowing what Washington really has as a kicker, I think that could be the difference. And it's going to be I think it's going to be an exciting game. I think it's going to be a great game to lead off the college football season with. But I think the Huskies put in a valiant effort, but they lose by a field goal.
Of course, I'm in the camp with you there, but I think for good reason. I do like Auburn's ability to run and stop the run, and I do like their depth, experience, talent, speed, the things we've mentioned. I like coaching. I don't think it's going to be hard to out-coach Chris Peterson in his game, because I have the utmost respect for those guys. But right. I think Gus has a staff now that he's very comfortable with. There's continuity, there's stability, and quite frankly, everybody's a little pissed off about the last 2 games of last season.
Right.
And this team has a chip on its shoulder. It's hungry, and I think they really do believe there's unfinished business to take care of to go out and try to win the SEC again this year, after winning the West last year and falling short against Georgia. But if it comes down to field goal, Auburn has a guy named Anders Carlson. Daniel Carlson was his older brother. He kicked 4 years for Auburn, and seems like he was a semifinalist for the Groza every year, but never quite put it over the top. But he says his younger brother Anders is better, and Anders does have a stronger leg. So if it comes down to that, I'm comfortable with it. I can kind of see the game going into the fourth quarter with Auburn maybe leading by a score, but tacking a little bit onto that, getting on in deep into the fourth quarter and winning by anywhere from 10, 12 to 14 points.
10 to 14. Yeah, no, that's a solid pick. I mean, that's a solid reasoning right there as well. So what I want to, basically what I want to see out of UW is, they're not intimidated by the surroundings. They don't get rattled.
Yeah.
Browning has a tendency when things kind of go south a little bit that they really go south, and he gets a little rattled maybe by crowd noise and that kind of thing. So, that's one of the things I'll be keeping my eye on. And in the punt return, they had Dante Pettis back there last year for the Huskies, and he's gone, and he was just – teams would kick away from him. I mean, I saw so many Pac-12 teams they weren't even going to take the chance, and he's gone. So you combine that with the kicking game and the things that, you and I both know things can go way wrong in a real quick on punts. So, I think that kind of stuff is going to spell doom for the Huskies.
Yeah, it's I thought the line is what 2.5, 1.5, depending on which book you're looking at. But I think you're right close to that line on your prediction, and I hope it's not that close, but it could be. And of course, if Auburn doesn't get their grits together, they're not going to win the ball game. And so they got to bring their A game, and it could come down to turnovers, actually, couldn't it?
Yeah, it actually. I mean, you and I both have watched so much football in our lives. It's the line, it's the trenches, and it's the small stuff like the turnovers, the penalty. Oh God, yeah, that just the small stuff adds up to big things, and if it's negative big things, we all know what happens.
Okay, well, Auburn and Washington, the hay is in the barn, so to speak. We're getting on toward Wednesday of the week, and then we get into Thursday, Friday, and then bingo. We've got a game on Thursday night. We're not going to talk about that when Texas A&M plays somebody like Northwestern State. We're not going to predict that one. But I'm going to start with your Pac-12, and then we'll go to the SEC.
Sounds good.
And we'll just give a winner. We on all of these, not elaborate necessarily, unless you have a little aside as to why you think one team might or might not win, or that it'll be very close. But we'll start with Colorado playing at Colorado State. Go ahead.
The Battle of Colorado, it's always funny. They start off with it at the beginning of the year, but they're not in the same conference. So, I kind of get it. I'm going to go with Colorado on this. I'll stick with my Pac-12 guys in this game. I think it's a high scoring game. Like this is one of those 55-45 kind of games. It's kind of like basketball on grass, but I think Colorado wins it.
Yeah, I think so too. I would agree with you, so especially after Hawaii beat Colorado State last week. Mike Bobo, I was surprised, and so I'm going with the Buffaloes myself. And now let's take old Mike Leach and Wazoo versus the Wyoming Cowboys.
Leach, my favorite coach from the conference. I love this guy. I was so sad when I heard he was in the mix for Tennessee. I was like, no, don't. Like media day won't be fun anymore, kind of deal. But you know what? The thing Leach has done, and I'm going to elaborate just a little bit here, he hasn't picked his starting quarterback yet, and there's like 4 guys in the mix for it. Mm-hmm. And on the depth chart, he listed all the guys, but he put the word "or" between every guy.
Every one of them.
So he made the comment that, hey, it's going to be a sight to see. It's going to be an exciting time. You might want to pay attention because you may not see anything like this again. But I think Wazoo goes up there regardless of who's the quarterback and takes care of business in Laramie. I think Wazoo takes care of business because, Wyoming has to replace Josh Allen, their experienced quarterback who's with the Buffalo Bills now. So I think this is a blowout, probably maybe a 3-touchdown victory by the Cougs. But to get out of Laramie with a win would be a great start for Washington State, considering they lost their quarterback to suicide over the offseason.
Oh, God. Well, I'm gonna agree with you there. Even though it isn't Laramie, you mentioned. I think Washington State and Leach, the Pirate, he comes down and gets the job done down there. And we'll move on to San Diego State and Stanford. That could be an interesting ball game.
You know what? It could be an interesting ball game. The San Diego State lost their big back from last year, Rashard Perry, who ran all over the Sun Devils at Arizona State, and San Diego State pulled off that upset. And then he did the same thing to Stanford last year. So I think Stanford's good. I mean, you got anytime the quarterback can turn around and go, here, Bryce Love, take the ball. That's going to be good for them, and I think they're going to be looking for a little payback from last year because San Diego State beat Stanford. So I think,
and it's in Stanford, right? It's in Palo Alto.
It's in Palo Alto, yeah. Which, if you haven't been to Palo Alto, make a trip up there because it's beautiful. But I think Stanford wins, like 42-28, 42-21, something like that. I think, the Cardinals is going to be ready to go.
Oh, yeah, I'm in 100% agreement. And even though San Diego State has been tough, your Oregon State Beavers have to travel to are they going to Columbus? Yeah.
They're going to Columbus. Yeah, that's going to be, as much as, hey, I rep my team and I support my guys regardless, but you just got to call it like it is. This is going to be a bloodbath. Ohio State wins real easy. The Beavs have, their new coach, their former quarterback from the late 90s, early 2000s, and Jonathan Smith. They have talent. Like the cupboard wasn't bare for Coach Smith, but I mean, you're in a massive rebuild in Corvallis and you're going to the horseshoe. This is going to be ugly. I think the Beavs are a 35-point underdog at this point, and you know what? If they can keep it within the spread, I will say that's almost like one of those moral victories kind of thing. But Ohio State wins that going away.
Yeah, regardless of the Meyer, all the tumult and all the controversy over Urban Meyer, it doesn't matter. I mean, Ohio State just has so much more talent right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And they should win the ball game easily.
Yeah.
And now North Carolina and Cal, the Tar Heels and the Golden Bears.
Boy, you know what? With all the stuff going on at Carolina in terms of, the coach coming out and talking about concussions and not really buying into it, and just different things surrounding the athletic department. And then you got Cal, who, they're kind of looked at as maybe the up and coming program. With all the energy there that their new coach has, I think this could be a fairly close game. And either team could win. I really think Cal is a bit more talented than people are giving them credit for. I think this is like a 35-28 game, 42-38 kind of thing. This game to me is a pick 'em. It just really is, because I think both programs are kind of in the same spot.
Yeah, I agree. I know the game's in Berkeley, isn't it?
Good question. I'd have to take a look.
Or is it at a neutral site?
I'm not sure if it's in Carolina or at Cal. That kind of escapes me right now.
Yeah, I've got them lined up, I think, on North Carolina versus Cal. North Carolina at Cal, okay. I believe.
Well, if it's at Cal,
and I think that'll be
maybe Cal comes up with it. Home crowd, home cooking, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And finally, in the Pac-12, before we move on to the SEC, you've got Brigham Young, who struggled mightily last year, versus the Wildcats down in Tucson.
That's right. And, you have a lot of hype down there in Tucson right now. You got Sumlin there, and, you got Khalil Tate, who, I met Khalil Tate at Pac-12 Media Day. This kid's the real deal. And I'll tell you what, he's always smiling. Anytime I see a picture of him, anytime I saw him at Media Day walking around or anything, he just has a constant smile on his face. He's very grateful for the opportunity that he has. I mean, I think he's kind of a trendy guy to put on at least on the Heisman list. He's only a sophomore.
Wow.
And it's going to be really interesting to see how someone uses a kid like this. because he can throw it, but if you get him space and they spread the field out on BYU, I mean, Tate's just going to eat it up. I think Arizona wins this game. I think they actually win it going away, like 2 or 3 touchdown kind of thing, where they should be in control most of this game. So, and I'm just excited to see Sumlin and how he handles Khalil Tate.
Absolutely. So Sumlin, I'm really curious to see how that's going to go out in Arizona, and I'm looking forward to that game. And I do agree. I think Arizona should win the game at home. BYU's still not up to it, I don't think.
Yeah, they're not. I don't think so either.
And we are agreeing all the way down the line, and we're not going to disagree here. Alabama and Louisville. I doubt we will.
Oh, yeah. No, if Alabama doesn't win this, I don't know, by 3 touchdowns, I would be shocked. Saban, Saban has a machine going. I mean, he looks over his shoulder and he sees a 5-star guy. He looks in front of him. There's a 5-star guy. He looks over his other shoulder. There's a 5-star guy. So he just has a wealth of talent. And that's what you get when you do what he's done, in Tuscaloosa. So, I don't think Louisville stands much of a chance in this game, especially without, their quarterback that they lost in the draft.
Oh, yeah, Lamar Jackson. Jackson is Louisville versus Alabama. The game is in another one of these kickoff classic type of deals in Orlando, but it doesn't matter if they played it in my backyard. Alabama's going to whop Louisville, and I think it'll be like a 20-point minimum.
Yeah.
So, and the interesting game, very interesting game on Sunday. Is it? I think it's Sunday or Monday, but anyway, it's kind of has the spotlight by itself on one of those nights. LSU and Miami at Jerry World in Arlington, Mike.
Yeah, that is Sunday night. It is
Sunday night. Yeah, thank you.
Boy, this is one of those where I just don't know. You got LSU, and you got all the questions about Orgeron. Is he going to be able to keep his job and all those things? And you got a Miami team, with Mark Richt, who's coming in and trying to restore the U to what they once were back in the day. So, I don't know if I completely buy Miami and the hype, but I think Miami does win this. I mean, they are the higher ranked team kind of deal. But you got to fill me in if LSU has talent to stay with Miami.
I think they have talent there. They always are going to have talent, but I don't think it's quite what it has been. And I think they're going to trend downward just a little bit this year. And again, they've got to find a quarterback. They have Burrow that's come in. Joe Burrow's come in as a transfer from Ohio State, but they don't have that running back. Like guys. I don't know if somebody will appear. Somebody will step forward and take the job. But no guys. No Leonard Fournette. Danny Etling was their senior quarterback. Of course, he was a transfer as well. But I think Miami's just got just a little bit more than LSU. I expect it to be a good game with the Hurricanes coming out on top.
Like by how much? Like how much do you expect?
Oh, let's see.
Like 10?
I don't think there's. I think it's going to be close. Maybe even one score, 7 or 8 points, maybe 6 or 8 points, something like that. 10 max, I would say. It could even come down to a field goal or a point or two.
Right.
But I'd put a 10-point cap on it for sure.
Okay.
And a really close ball game. Down in Houston, the Texas Tech Red Raiders are going to take on the Ole Miss Rebels.
Ooh.
Right.
Boy, the Texas Tech, and you got that air raid system. You got, and then you got Mississippi, and you know what?
They can chuck it around.
Boy, I don't know. I really don't know about this game in terms of who's better, who's not. Because sometimes you look at Ole Miss, and you look at Ole Miss sometimes, and they got plenty of talent, or they're good, and they turn out to be not so good. And then Texas Tech, that system that they have, man, I'm telling you, is pretty crazy. So help me out here, Bird, with this game.
Well, it is. I think it is a toss-up, even though Texas Tech is favored by 2 or 2.5 or whatever it is. I'm not overly familiar with their personnel, but Ole Miss has They have a great quarterback, and they have maybe arguably the best wide receiver in the country in A.J. Walker, and he's got a cast of people to throw
Right.
the ball to. They've got a lot of guys coming back, and they're going to score. Defense has always been a struggle, though, and I think they're going to give up some points. So, again, you mentioned Texas Tech's going to be slinging it around. So I think you're looking at one of those 38-35 deals possibly. And I just don't, as far as a winner goes, I'd like to see the SEC win, but something just tells me maybe Texas Tech pulls it out
Right.
late somehow.
Yeah, I mean that
Okay.
sounds good to me because, like I said, like you said, I mean the spread is 2.5 points, so it's call heads or tails on a coin toss there, with these guys. So yeah,
Yeah. But I'll probably change my mind tomorrow when I write my prediction.
Exactly. And then once that's published, you're going to change your mind again. Be like, well, I heard this, I heard that, and yeah. So,
well, we'll see. We'll see. I just think it's I think it's a toss-up. And then the last game on the list, we've got going over to Charlotte, North Carolina, where West Virginia and the Mountaineers will host the Tennessee Volunteers under new head coach Jeremy Pruitt, former defensive coordinator at Alabama and Georgia and Florida State.
And you said the game was it was
Charlotte.
at West Virginia?
No, it's Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a neutral deal. Another one of those.
Oh, a neutral deal. Okay. Yeah. New coach at Tennessee, new attitude, trying to build some hype up for Rocky Top there. I don't know with West Virginia, their personnel, but I know it's a solid program. Like it never really has like huge collapses in terms of back-to-back seasons of like 3 wins and that kind of thing. But I like the energy coming out of Tennessee with this. I know probably the kids for Tennessee are going to be fired up. I know the coach is going to be fired up. So I'm going to pick Tennessee in this one by a score. So we'll take it for what that is. But do you know anything about West Virginia?
Well, Will Greer, their quarterback, is an all-world guy.
That's right.
And
that's right. Will Greer.
If you've been getting that Heisman promotion stuff on him, and I think they're good. I think West Virginia is very good. I think you're exactly right. Tennessee is going to be fired up. They've got a new guy. He's going to demand effort, and they're going to play their hearts out and lay it on the line. But I just think West Virginia has too much talent for Tennessee.
Too much.
Yeah.
Like by how much? Like are we talking a score or like?
I'd say
2 touchdowns.
I'd say double digits.
Double digits. Okay.
Yeah. Right. A couple of touchdowns or 17 maybe.
Yeah. That's like I said. Like I just didn't know that much about West Virginia. So yeah, it's all good.
But they're we're going to find out. I know there's going to be some upsets, so I'm really curious to see what they're going to be, and looking really looking forward to the games coming up. Again, we've got an SEC team. I don't know about Pac-12. We've got one on Thursday night, but it's Texas A&M and Northwest State or whoever it is, so I'm not overly interested in that.
Right.
But when we really get down to the nitty-gritty on Saturday, and that's when it.
Yeah, and if you're, and I know your mindset's kind of like me, and it's just like, thank God football's back.
Woo,
it's ready to get kicked off, and you see the big hits, you see the touchdowns, especially with college football, man. I'm a huge college football guy because of all the tradition and the bands and just, everybody's like, that's my school. That's where I went. Those are my guys. I ride with my guys. And, that kind of whole mentality. I love seeing that and being around it.
Oh, yeah, me too. And I cannot wait. Well, Mike, thanks again for being with us. I've just enjoyed it so very much talking to you, my friend, and a Pac-12 guy.
Yeah.
And tell us where we can find you on Twitter and online and so forth.
You can find me on Twitter. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Pigskin Opinion. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. You can email me at NikeBeeve. I know it's kind of what it is, but NikeBeeve@gmail.com. Get into the conversation. Tell me your thoughts, your opinions. It's all good. You know what, Bert? It's always good to hear your voice. We haven't talked kind of voice to voice in a long time. And anytime you want me back or anytime you just want to have me on, we can talk football. I am more than willing to come on the show, buddy.
Oh, great. I do appreciate it. And you can find me on Twitter at Autull, Autull, and I am on sportshacks.com. That's where my podcasts are. And there'll be the occasional column on Sports Hacks, but most of what I've been doing, I've just been posting on Facebook here lately and put one up today, as a matter of fact, my SEC preview. And let's see. Also, I mentioned Facebook. Yeah, I think that's about it. So, folks, we do appreciate you listening. We ask you to take care out there and be sure to love your neighbor.